She walked into the Grand Naval Briefing Hall with silent confidence, boots echoing like controlled gunshots across polished marble. Her uniform crisp, unembellished, intentionally ordinary, because she never needed medals to speak for her. Her presence did that long before her rank ever did. And yet, as she entered, conversations paused not because they recognized her, but because they didn't. And humans always pause before things unfamiliar and unervingly calm, especially when wrapped in a uniform that looked too simple, too quiet, too unthreatening. Almost like a recruit or junior officer who accidentally walked into a room where titans of command debated global military strategy. And seated at the center of them was U.S. Navy Admiral Charles H. Reddington III, decorated, loud, respected, feared, and accustomed to everyone beneath him treating his words like scripture and his humor like law. And the moment he spotted her walking toward the reserved seat placed directly beside him, at the main table, confusion flashed over his face like a glitch in an otherwise perfectly trained system. Then amusement, then entitlement, because men like him never stayed confused long. They simply built explanations around their superiority. And so with exaggerated annoyance he laughed and said loud enough for the entire hall to hear, "Oh look, someone brought the wrong recruit. Did you wander in here from boot camp, sweetheart?" And laughter followed, the kind that wasn't truly cruel but wasn't kind either, the kind that relied on the assumption she was nobody, someone to mock, dismiss, or correct. But she simply stopped walking, turned her head slightly, and looked at him the way snipers look at targets. Not emotionally, not angrily, just with observation, calculation, and unreadable silence. And for the first time, the Admiral felt something he had not felt in years: uncertainty. Though he quickly masked it with bravado and added, "Don't worry, when the real officers arrive, someone will show you where the junior staff sits." The room chuckled again, but a general positioned 2 seats away frowned with recognition, his eyes narrowing as if something in her expression or posture triggered a memory he'd buried under classified security layers. And she continued walking without a word, pulling out the chair beside the Admiral, the seat reserved for the senior-most operational authority in the room. And when she sat, she did so with posture that wasn't stiff, nervous, or defensive. No, she sat like someone accustomed to command, someone who didn't need approval to belong somewhere, someone who already owned the room. The Admiral leaned in with a scoff and muttered, "Listen, recruit, this isn't a simulation or a training panel. This is real military strategy between real leaders. So unless you're here to refill water pitchers, you might want to step out before you embarrass yourself." Again, she gave no reaction, instead calmly lifting the sleeve of her left uniform arm. Not dramatically, not theatrically, just enough to reveal a precise, ink-black tattoo. A single mark, minimalist, sharp, and instantly recognizable only to those who belong to a very small, very elite global circle. It was the sniper insignia reserved not for graduates, not for instructors, not even for Tier 1 snipers, but for the record holders, the ghosts, the shooters whose names were erased from public documents because their accomplishments belonged not to history books, but to classified vaults and whispered legend. The general's eyes widened first, and a captain's hand froze halfway to his coffee. Then another admiral inhaled sharply and nearly choked. The room changed instantly, like oxygen had been replaced with electricity. The mocking eyes now stared with confusion, then recognition, then disbelief, then, finally, respect mixed with fear. Only the one man still laughing was the admiral beside her, unaware he had just humiliated himself in front of someone whose rank was not worn on fabric, but earned in blood, grit, and impossibly precise bullet trajectories across wind, time, and war zones no one would ever publicly acknowledge existed. The general cleared his throat and said quietly, "Admiral, do you know who you're speaking to?" The admiral rolled his eyes, still arrogant, still blind, replying, "What, some tattooed show-off? Probably someone who did one good exercise and decided ink makes her special." The general didn't raise his voice. Instead, he spoke in that terrifying tone military leaders use when revealing classified truths, That tattoo is authorized for one person in the United States Navy. One. And she didn't do well in training. The room waited, silent, breathless, reverent. She holds the longest confirmed operational sniper elimination in recorded military history. Not just in our branch, not just in our nation, but globally. Silence thickened. The Admiral stopped breathing. The General continued. 2,940 meters. One shot. Crosswind. Thermal distortion. Zero margin for error. And she made that shot after 3 days lying motionless under enemy drone surveillance. With no sleep, no backup, and no extraction plan. A colonel added in awe, "People call her the ghost line. Because if she marks you, he's swallowed." You never hear the second sound. The Admiral's face drained of color as every fragment of arrogance shattered. And finally, slowly, she spoke for the first time, her voice low, calm, steady. "My name is Commander Elise Hale. I was sent here not to observe, not to learn, and not to serve refreshments." She turned her head and locked eyes with the Admiral so precisely it felt like crosshairs aligning. "I am here to lead." Then she tapped the folder in front of her, top clearance, classified red band, placing it gently yet decisively on the table. "And Admiral Reddington, as of 0900 hours today, you report to me." The entire hall inhaled at once. The humiliation didn't come from her tone. She hadn't mocked him, hadn't insulted him, hadn't even acknowledged his earlier comments. It came from the reality that he had mocked a ghost, a legend, a weapon disguised as a woman, someone whose record outranked every metal pin to his chest. The Admiral stood abruptly and saluted. Not because she demanded it, but because his body moved with instinct, recognizing authority before his mind finished catching up. From that moment forward, no one in that room saw a recruit, no one saw a woman in uniform. They saw the one person every elite operative whispered about but never expected to meet. The silent protector, the unmatched marksman, the strategist who didn't need to raise her voice to control outcomes. Commander Elise Hale opened her folder, projected satellite footage, and began briefing global military leaders like she had done it 1,000 times, because she had. And while the room listened, silent and reverent, Admiral Reddington sat 2 inches shorter emotionally than he ever had in his career, knowing that respect isn't worn, it's proven. The briefing room fell into controlled silence as Commander Elise Hale continued speaking, the giant digital screen illuminating her face like a battlefield command post at midnight, and every officer in the room leaned forward as she explained the severity of the mission. A rogue paramilitary group armed with next-generation electronic warfare equipment had captured a NATO general and moved him deep in a mountainous terrain protected by anti-drone technology, encrypted comms, and thermal camouflage, making traditional reconnaissance impossible and rendering satellite tracking unreliable. And while others debated what resources to deploy, Elise merely pointed to a blinking coordinate and said, "I already found them," her tone steady like she was reciting weather conditions, not describing an international crisis. The Admiral finally spoke, voice careful now, cautious, respectful. "How?" And Elise looked at him with the same expression she held while staring down rifle scopes. Calm, clinical, detached before replying, "Patterns. Not tech. Not noise. Humans are predictable, even when they think they're ghosts." A colonel asked her if she was certain, and without turning her head, she answered, "Certainty is a luxury. Accuracy is a discipline, and I don't miss." A quiet shock spread again, but instead of disbelief this time, it was trust, respect, fear wrapped in admiration. The mission briefing shifted from theory to execution, and all eyes waited for her plan. "Extraction window is 72 hours, she said. "Terrain is vertical shale, narrow approach, limited cover, and constant surveillance. They're waiting for a rescue team to fail." She tapped the screen once. "So we won't send one." Confusion rippled through the room until she added, "We send one person. One shot. One opportunity. One ghost." And without hesitation, everyone understood she would go. Admiral Reddington cleared his throat, the last of his uncertainty crumbling as he asked with full military reverence, "Commander Hale, what do you need?" She looked at him, not with triumph or ego, but strategy and focus. A thermal filtered Barrett MRAD, subsonic mod, adaptive bipod, carbon suppressor, and a 5-person support perimeter positioned 2 kilometers back. They will not move. They will not fire. They are there for extraction only. The general nodded, writing everything down. Elise continued, I will insert from altitude. No ground approach. No vehicle signature. No digital footprint. A captain blinked. Halo. Over a no-fly zone. Elise's lips barely lifted into something almost like a smile, but colder, more dangerous. No. HAHO. 45,000 feet. Wind drift insertion. They'll never hear me. They'll never see me. The Admiral exhaled slowly, finally understanding the level of operator sitting beside him. Someone who didn't need an army, didn't need drones, didn't need overwhelming force. She needed silence, distance, and a single bullet. Hours later, at a classified airfield, the ramp of a stealth transport plane opened like a metal jaw swallowing the sky. Icy wind howling across the runway as Elise approached wearing a matte black flight suit, oxygen mask, and lightweight suppressed weapons kit. Her sniper rifle, carefully disassembled, was strapped across her pack like a sacred artifact. Even elite operators stopped what they were doing when she passed, not from orders, not from protocol, but instinct, for predators always recognize the apex of their kind. Admiral Reddington stood there as well, humbled but present, offering a respectful nod instead of a joke or command. Bring them home, he said quietly. Elise paused just long enough to respond. Always. And then she walked up the ramp, silhouette framed against the roaring sky like a shadow carved from war itself. The plane ascended into darkness. Hours passed. Silence. Then, somewhere above a hostile mountain range, Commander Elise Hale stepped off the aircraft and vanished into the night, body falling like a controlled meteor until she deployed her chute at the perfect moment, wind carrying her like a whisper through thin air. She landed silently, knees sinking into frost-covered rock, already assembling her weapon with movements so precise they were nearly invisible in the dark. Down below, the enemy camp sat hidden beneath camouflage so advanced even thermal imaging struggled to detect it, but not her. She had mapped their habits, their rotations, their breathing patterns. She waited, patient, unmoving. Minutes turned into an hour, then 2, then 3. Her body still as ice, her heartbeat controlled, her breathing slowed so deeply she nearly matched the earth beneath her. Finally, there he was, the target guarding the hostage, stepping into the narrow gap between tents where wind shifted and exposed the faintest ripple of heat. Elise inhaled once, exhaled once. The world shrank to a single point. Trigger pressure constant. Wind calculations instinctive. Bullet trajectory inevitable. And then, silence became consequence. One suppressed shot. One life ended. One rescue suddenly possible. Chaos erupted below as radios crackled. Men scrambled, and alarms triggered. But none of it mattered, because Elise was already moving, already adjusting, already disappearing in a higher terrain. The support team extracted the hostage with flawless timing, because timing wasn't a request. It was an order, and every soldier followed it. Hours later, back at command, the team returned. Hostage safe, threat neutralized, 0 casualties. Elise stepped into the room, Frost still clinging to her uniform, and Admiral Reddington, former skeptic, now believer, stood and saluted her with full military respect. Commander Hale, he said, your work today will never be forgotten. She nodded once. It won't be spoken about either. And she walked away, not toward applause, not toward fame, just toward the next mission waiting in silence.